Hi, I'm Eddie Obeng, and this is how. Every day I bring you a different way to transform your world. Today I've got one which is really crucial for you. It's about allowing you to work out and be able to see whether your actions are going to be worthwhile. It's the ultimate business case, which can be created in 7 minutes. How long does it normally take you? It's the ultimate reason for doing actions, which you can engage your team, your family in, so that everyone lines up. It's called the GapLeap. Let's jump onto Cube and I'll share it with you. So welcome to Cube. This is the yellow cubicle. It's the teaching area for 25 people. I just noticed there's stuff on the screen there. So oh yes, I know what this one is. This is, yeah, I asked Grok, I said, if everybody used Eddie Obeng's project management methods globally, how much would waste and failure be reduced by? I'm not going to tell you the answer. You're going to have to go and figure that out for yourself, because right now we've got to go and talk about the important thing. And the important thing at the moment is the GapLeap. So let's jump out. I'm going to have a look. So what's a GapLeap? There are 3 reasons we think about GapLeaps. And the first is, very simply, I'll tell you this. Last Easter, I fell out with a neighbor. We were having a conversation and it was going backwards and forwards. And I realized afterwards why I'd fallen out with them, because they'd offered what's called a half pinion. The wonderful Scott Adams came up with this idea of a half pinion. He said when he talks to people, what he discovers is that some people just concentrate on the benefits. Oh yes, we should make sure that everybody's well trained and we should have lots of things in school. And they'll talk about all the benefits. Or, oh, we should make sure we save money in schools, or we should, whatever it is, they'll talk about the costs. But both of those are half pinions, because you need to be able to do both. And people then decide which one they fall in love with, and then they push that one. This is not a business case. This is a half business case. It's a half pinion. The other thing which I had also was I once had a colleague who came to work for us at Pentacle, to work with us at Pentacle. And he'd been with an organization, Royal Mail. So it's sort of like civil service, but not quite. But it's the sort of organization where people don't get fired. You have a steady salary and so on. And like most people who live on salaries, you quite quickly forget that the money comes in irrespective of what you've done that month. And whenever anyone joined us at Pentacle, I would say the same thing to him. I'd say to them, you have to understand now that it is now your time you're spending. It is your inputs you're spending. So if you don't spend your time, you will get nothing for it. In other words, you have to focus on making sure that it works to keep you fed. And I would explain this, and I'd send them off to read my book, The Money Making Machine. None of them ever read it, because most people don't realize they don't understand how money's made. Anyway, this particular chap joined us. I said, great. We've got some projects. He said, yeah, I'm not joining the projects, but I'm going off on holiday to France. So I went, oh, okay. You've just come out of a job. We've got some projects lined up. I'm thinking revenue, get some revenue in before you spend it. He's off on holiday in France. So he goes off on holiday. He says, I'm off for 3 months. After about a month and a half, he phones me and says, I just noticed that there's nothing in the bank account. My other half's asking me what's happening, because the bank contacted us because something was getting a bit tight. Maybe I should come back and carry on. And that's absolutely the same sort of half pinion thing, where he hadn't realized that the revenue comes in from your salary and then you spend it. Most people don't realize that. So they do, but they forget. They forget you've got to do both sides. And if you're in a job, you're not spending every day worrying about how the money's going to come in. You just worry about the budgets, how you spend it. And that's a sort of an illusion. And so again, this is where GapLeap comes in. The third place GapLeap comes in is one of my signature projects. This was a project with a company called Cadbury Schweppes, where they were trying to drive innovation. Why? Because it was an old company. Basically, you never got fired. People wouldn't stick their neck on the line. And I was trying to persuade them to do innovation, and the senior board were struggling to think about it. Anyway, the project involved lots of observations. I did this with people like Colin Burns and stuff like, and Christophe Gillet from Sony. And then we ended up producing a product called Heroes, which some of you would have eaten, okay? So that's what happened. But the way I persuaded them to do the innovation was basically by saying, well, right now you haven't got enough products in the pipeline. If you don't do anything, what's going to happen to you? Okay, every senior executive in the boardroom wrote down what was going to happen to them. I said, what happened if you could fix it? They wrote that down as well. They weren't just opposites. And then I said, why haven't you fixed it? And there were things like no one wants to stick their neck out, it hasn't been defined, etc. And that is a gap leap. A gap leap is basically the difference between where we are and where we'd like to be. Here's an example. Okay, this is from the days of when of lockdown, when everybody got stuck at home. Or stuck themselves at home. And I was talking to one of the universities, and they were saying, oh, we don't have a way to be sure of making students will be engaged as we move to working virtually. They didn't say this. They said, oh, we've got a problem with students. We need to get them more aligned. You see, most people think in terms of objectives, but when you're building a business case, you have to think in terms of the gap. A gap is the difference between where you are and where you'd like to be. Always phrase it as a gap, never as a goal or an objective, and always write in sentences. So I said to the guys from the university, I said, tell me about it. I said, tell me what happens if you don't fix it. And they said, oh, well, if we don't fix it, the college will lose income, the university will lose prestige, the lecturers will be demoralized, we'll have to work super hard as tutors, the students might lose some mental well-being, we'll have to student dropouts, they'll fail their exams, and they won't get through the course material. I said, that's terrible, okay? I said, well, tell me what would happen if you did fix it, okay? And then give me a different thing. The new normal might come out as better. The college might be able to maintain its results, increased income, ability to able to reach students, visibility of workload might come out of it, asynchronous learning might come out, and it might we might get also some proof that the students have learned because we can deal with it. So basically, what they said here is, if we don't fill this gap, then they won't get through the course materials, they might fail, the university will lose prestige and it'll lose its income. If we do win, look what the good things which could come from it. So now you have contrast persuasion because they can see the good and the bad. But that's also the benefits and the costs, but they're mixed up because in real life, not fixing things generates benefits and costs in real life, and fixing things generates benefits and costs, okay? So then the question is, why haven't you fixed it yet? And they said, oh, well, many key decision owners just want to wait and see what happens when we come out the other end. We've assumed we have control over the students, so we can tell them what to do. We haven't learned about Cube. I stuck that one in because I was selling Cube, basically. And we haven't figured out how to communicate this to the students. So at this point, in less than 15 minutes, everybody has realized that this gap can be filled. This gap should be filled, and actually the reasons we are not moving are quite trivial. So I said, okay, let's put costs to this. What happens if you don't fix it? And they said, well, we'll work out all the costs. This will cost that will cost that, add them all up and come to a number. Oh, it's the wrong side. And they said, well, if we don't fix it, we'll probably lose about 2 million, okay? And I said, okay, well, what happens if you fix it? Oh, well, if we can do it and we can do it more effectively, it's probably about, I don't know, let's say 5 million. So the difference between these two numbers is what's called the value at stake. So that's about 7 million. So then the question is, how much would you invest in order to get this 7 million? And you look at these things here and they don't cost that much. And so it was really quite an easy sale for Cube because it wasn't 7 million. 7 million would mean a 1-year payback, which isn't bad at all. So that's the GapLeap. It's really straightforward. It's a process of making sure you've got a gap, not an objective, very important. Discussing what happens if you don't fix it, telling it as a story. What happens if you fix it, telling that as a story. Digging out why not fixed, working that out, and then putting numbers to everything so that you can work out what's going on. The PET has got detailed information, so it tells you at each stage what to do. And that's the GapLeap. So off you go and stop having half opinions, stop falling out with neighbors over Easter, and I'll see you again. But make sure you don't miss out. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure your team doesn't miss out because you want to do a GapLeap with them. Get them to subscribe. I've been Eddie Obeng. See you again.